this example. You know, there's Disneyland out in California, and there's Disney World down in Florida. I've been down to Disney World twice. First time I was 12 years old. Second time, they have, if I remember correctly, the name of it, they have this building you go to called the Hall of Presidents. Okay, the Hall of Presidents. When I was 12, it was a mechanical robot. Mechanical deal where you go in and sit down, and all these presidents, Washington, Jefferson, Lincoln, Kennedy, Roosevelt, all the presidents there, and they're up there like they're in their world, and we're in our world, and the lighting up, and walking. Stand up. And that's what happened with the crowd. The crowd kind of laughed. And then so then we went in 86, right before, it was BC, it was before children. So we went, we went before kids, let's have one last, let's spend our money on us. So we went, and we went to the Hall of Presidents, and it was greatly improved. There was no Mike Lawrence sideways deal, but it was still mechanical, and it was still artificial. And it was still an attempt to duplicate a human. And my point for bringing that up is the world tries to duplicate God's design. We're making great gains in artificial intelligence. We're making great gains in robotics. I watched a video this week of an automatic gas station where you roll in there and everything is all sensored up. It senses you rolling in, and you command it, and it opens your gas cap, opens your gas door, yada yada, pushes all the buttons, and you know some of those buttons you got to push. Do you want a car wash? Do you, blah blah blah. It does all that. We're making great gains in artificial intelligence. But God's design is amazing. With our minds, with our bodies, with the process of communication. Lynn worked for an optometrist who was a believer and said he got teared up nearly every time he talked about it. The eye is simply amazing. Vision is simply, it's amazing. The world currently, our culture currently is in the process of redefining what it is to be a woman. And I'm not even touching the gender confusion. That's not even my point. I'm talking about our culture has spent the last 30, 40, 50 years or so telling us what a woman should be. Barbie doll. You should be this physique. You should have this structure. You should have this. You should behave this way. We have, I'm looking at you guys now, you girls, we have a model for a godly woman presented in Scripture that we're going to look at this passage. And then we have some extras we're going to look at, you see there. We'll get to the outline, make sure Kim is satisfied. But here's my point. God tells us what a woman should be. God tells us what a godly woman should be. And like Greg mentioned, we all have had a mom. Most of us have had godly moms. Most of us are married and have godly wives. But that's not exclusive. But we've all had moms. And this is what God says. So while the world does the Hall of Presidents and tries, they come up a little bit short in my view. And so we're going to look at these passages. I'm going to tell you the passage later. You probably can guess it. But if anybody need a bulletin, we're going to run through this. Here's the deal. My goal is to get you to the restaurant before any other church lets out. This is, in restaurant world, this is the busiest day of the year. It's not Christmas. There's no other holiday. This is the busiest restaurant day of the year. I'm not taking Lynn out, so if you would bring your leftovers, swing by, give us a call, and we'll open the door for you. Serving pizza. There you go. I appreciate Rob Grandy here last week, but I tell you this. Here's Rob Grandy. I've known Rob Grandy since early 70s when he was a yard guy at Camp Christian and has had this long Joe Mulak type hair. He was a beast. In ministry, I've known Rob since, Lynn, early 80s, mid 80s. We've done weeks at camp together. It's really, Rob is probably one of my top 5 friends. He's a good guy, but I got to call out false teaching. He did some false teaching last week that I got to call out. I was not over in Philadelphia last week. So he misspoke. It was a partial truth. I did get to hold the grandson, but we left Saturday morning, went to Ohio to my brother's family, and came back Sunday afternoon. So we weren't gone very long, but we got to go to a Pelk family reunion, first gathering since Mom passed in 18. And that's been too long, but it was good to hold the grandson. But Rob was a false teacher. And I'm going to take him out to lunch this week and yell at him. But I did watch the video on YouTube. I appreciated the sermon he shared, and I put a lot of emphasis on verse 17 as well, and so I'll pass that along. But this passage we want to look at gives us the definition of a godly woman. Her husband trusts her. So we're just going to fill these right in. Her husband trusts her. And I'm not here to preach Lynn. I'm here to preach Christ, but I got to tell you, I got a godly woman. I have a godly wife. And so one of the things that I really appreciate about Lynn is I can trust her. I have to tell you, she doesn't know everything. That doesn't sound good, does it? And what I say by that, I say this. If I'm looking at Amanda. So if Amanda and Vic, and this is totally made up, if Amanda and Vic are having struggles, this is not the case, but if they are having struggles, and Amanda or Vic come and talk to me, that's where it stays. So I don't go home and say, oh my goodness, you ought to hear about Amanda and Vic. I could, because I can trust her, but I don't. And there's a lot of things that she doesn't know, and we were up in Greensburg for 10 years, and it took them numerous years up there to realize, because they would go to Lynn and say, what's Greg saying about Amanda and Vic? What's Greg saying? And Lynn would say, I don't know. And they're like, yeah, she's just not telling us. No, I don't say things that are in confidence to me. And the cool thing about a godly woman is she wouldn't either. You know, you can trust a godly woman, and not just with information, but trust that your relationship to that godly woman is yours. You can trust her. There's no question of what's going on. So her husband trusts her. And I'm telling you, in a marriage or in any relationship, trusting a partner, trusting another human is very important. And with a godly woman, you can trust them. She does him good all the days of her life. That'll be in verse 12. She works with her hands. That may be employment, that may not be employment. That's not really the point. The point is she's not sitting idle. She's industrious. Because God, look at the Adam and Eve, look at the garden. The idea was a helpmate. 6 days, 5 days creation is good, it is good, it is good. It is not good to be left alone. So I will create a helpmate, a helpmeet. And so there's industry involved there. She rises pre-dawn. She employs wisdom. Again, 15 and under, look at me. Wisdom. Wisdom is different than knowledge. Wisdom is knowing what to do with what you know. And one of the things that surprised my mom was the internet. My grandmother was born in 1888, and she died just a few months shy of 100. And so the development in mankind in that 100 years, and then my mom in her life, she was born in 32, I think. So it was like all that development. One of the things that surprised my mom was like, so you just click these keys and you get to this, in her world, I define it for a card catalog. You can get all this information. You're 15 and under, and you are unaware of life before computers. We older folks, right, Mike? We older folks, we didn't have that. We had to read a paper, watch the news, which was biased, but not nearly as biased as it is now. We had to go to the library and get information. So we have information. I'm not talking about she employs knowledge. She employs wisdom. Wisdom is deep. Wisdom is what to do with what you know. And so as you grow, as you mature, all of us, as we journey on our life, our goal isn't to learn more. So when we get to the other side, Jesus said, what do you know? It's what did you do with what you know? So employ wisdom. She is compassionate. Lynn and I like to joke. We make fun of each other. I let her sleep in this morning. She did not have to get me coffee this morning. I'll let you rest, woman. We like to joke around, but can you imagine someone who would be constantly ridiculing, constantly unaware of your feelings? So this being compassionate is important. She is prepared. She makes herself attractive. And there are all kinds of old preacher jokes about barns, and I won't go into them, but you've probably heard them. Cheap shots. Cheap shots. I'm not after a cheap shot. When I say makes herself attractive, am I talking about appearance and getting dressed up, makeup? Yeah, to a degree. But makes herself attractive in persona, in her person. And that would also translate into clothing and appearance. But makes herself attractive, like the opposite of, man, I don't want to be around that girl. Man, I want to be around me. Makes herself attractive. She is concerned for his reputation. And that's for sure an important characteristic. She is optimistic. Back when Saturday Night Live was half fun, they had a girl who was Debbie Downer, and she would take every situation and turn it into a negative. Who wants to be around that? Who wants to be around that? She is kind, and her goal is a Christian home. And if you're unaware yet, that's Proverbs 31. Proverbs 31. And so you have your verses listed there, and I'm going to read them. I'm going to read that passage. This is from the New Century Version. Begins in verse 10. It says, "It is hard to find a good wife." Why? Because she is worth more than rubies. Hard to find, rare. Her husband trusts her completely. Again, if you're 15 and under, why not strive to meet this? Why be a hall of presidents that malfunctions? Why let the world tell you what a good, godly woman or what a good woman is? Why not let the Word tell you? Why not let God tell you what we value, what He values? Her husband trusts her completely. With her, he has everything he needs. She does him good and not harm for as long as she lives. She looks for wool and flax. She likes to work with her hands. She's like a trader's ship bringing food from far away, even pizza. She gets up while it's still dark and prepares food for her family. I thought about that passage years ago, and I thought, when did I ever get up as a kid? When did I ever get up before my mom? Let me think about that. I don't care how old you are now. Think about when you were 4 or 5. Your grandson's got to be asking question after question. I love that age. I mean, you guys, do you get up before your mom? Do you go and wake her up? No. She rises pre-dawn. She gets up for you to meet your needs. Kind of like God too, right? She gets up while it's still dark and prepares food for her family and feeds her servant girls. Takes care of those around her. She inspects the field and buys it. So she's business-minded. With the money she has earned, she plants a vineyard. She employs her earnings. She's responsible with what she has. She does her work with energy, and her arms are strong. It always cracks me up. I used to go to Kennywood quite a bit. Our church was right above Kennywood. It was Homeville Christian Church, and we didn't have air conditioning. We could hear the roller coaster starting during church, and we're like, all right, preacher, you're going too long. The roller coasters are rolling. Half our youth group worked at Kennywood, and it was free entrance back in the day. So we'd go to Kennywood all the time. We'd go down there and get popcorn and have a hot dog and ride 1 or 2 rides. But always, even as a kid, it cracked me up. Here's the father walking around with nothing. And here's the mother walking around with her purse, with the kids' prizes they won, with the food they half eaten. And so the mother's like this pack mule, and the father's walking around like Gomer Pyle, like she's saying, well, look at that. Her arms are strong. Her arms are strong, not just physically. She knows what she makes is good. Her lamp burns late into the night. That's another thing. I don't know, when my mom went to bed as a kid, like she was up before I got up. She was awake when I went to bed. She makes thread with her hands, weaves her own cloth. She welcomes the poor and the needy. Is your mom the Kool-Aid mom? Everybody come to for the stuff. She does not worry about her family when it snows because they all have fine clothes to keep them warm. She makes covering for herself. Her clothes are made of linen and other expensive materials. She dresses up. It's not Walmart all the time. Her husband is known at the city meetings where he makes decisions as one of the leaders of the land. She makes fine linen clothes and sells them, but provides belts to the merchants. She is strong and is respected by the people. She looks forward to the future with joy. Future doesn't scare her. She speaks wise words and teaches others to be kind. You older folks, do you remember like VBS, Sunday school time, camp, summer camp, other teaching times where you just see men and women, but you just see these adults that their purpose is to pass on this baton of faith, of teaching. And kids under 15, that's what I'm talking about. It was like, it's not just about you. Your world, life isn't always about you. Life is about doing for others, doing for the kingdom with primarily your family. And then I like the church family as well. She watches over her family and never wastes time. Sometimes my wife Lynn makes me feel guilty. I'm sitting down and she's just always either in the kitchen or down doing she's the office guru. She's doing the bills. She's doing, like, just stop. You're making me feel guilty. Always busy. Her children speak well of her. Her husband also praises her. There are many fine women, he says, but you are better than all of them. And I like this kind of like a wrap-up sentence. Charm can fool you. Beauty can trick you. And you know, some of the other paraphrases, beauty is fading, right? So let me read that again. Charm can fool you. Now I'm going to speak pretty direct. Husbands and wives. Husbands, if you're married, I'll make you a husband, watch yourself. Watch yourself for the principle of the grass is greener, always greener on the other side. Affairs, extramarital affairs, don't start with physical touch. Extramarital affairs begin right up here, usually through the gate of the eyes. And you look, and guys are more visually oriented than women, typically. And you can look and say, whoa, whoa. And then Satan and this process of sin, James, you read it, James, but man, God doesn't tempt you, Satan tempts you. When you're deceived, Satan is the great deceiver. God really didn't say you could not touch everything, right? And then what happens is this process of turning from your allegiance to the one you're committed to. And what God should bring together, let no man separate, right? Charm can fool you. Beauty can trick you. I'm getting to the age now where classmates are retiring. People I used to look up to, I have to look down to because we shrink. As we get older, we shrink. We just shrink. Beauty can trick you because it's kind of fleeting, right? Isn't it really? Isn't it really? 30, 40, 50, 60, 80 years, 90 years. So be careful. But a woman who respects the Lord should be praised. So 15 and under, your beauty is not your goal. It helps, but your beauty is not your goal. Someone who respects the Lord. And it really ties into Ecclesiastes 12 where it says, it's all been said, it's all been done, and here's a conclusion. Fear God and keep his commands. So it ties right in. Give her the reward she has earned. She should be praised in public for what she has done. So Lynn, you've done 3 things good. I don't know what they are, but I'll give you, so yay for you. I joke. So on your outline, in your bulletin, we have more from Mother Teresa. And I have Teresa in uppercase letters. I didn't mean to do the full name, but I'm talking about Teresa Gallagher. And that's what the youth group used to call her when Bill and Teresa were youth group leaders and Arlo helped a little bit. They called her Mother Teresa. So we're talking about Teresa Gallagher. And she had in our buzz, and there's copies at each door. Teresa does a lot for our church. She does she puts the video up onto YouTube. She does that for us. She does the buzz. Used to be Les and Sandy, and I don't know who was the leader on that, but it used to be Les and Sandy, and Les passed that baton to Teresa a few years back. So Teresa gets that all together. And in this month's issue of the Buzz, our newsletter, she has this list about what makes a great mom. And there's a qualifier before the list. It's a couple good paragraphs for you. And then here's a list of some top qualities of a mom. Patient. Patient. I know some moms from my neighborhood that weren't patient. Almost all the time, they're very impatient women. But a good mom is a patient person. respectful, strong, physically, yeah, emotionally, for sure. Humble, empathetic. What's empathetic? Empathetic, when you have empathy, is the ability to sympathize, empathize, to appreciate from their perspective what someone is going through. How many times, even this morning, my wife has, verbalized, and just a cocoon of care. And so a good woman, a good mom is empathetic. Authoritative, have the magic of this. Did you hear that? Growing up, being church, authoritative. I have a vision of, because I was around the youth group a lot, and one of the, at Greensburg, we had sign language. We had about 15 or 20 deaf people, and there was always an interpreter in front of the pulpit, and we had one of the interpreters, Lynn was one of them, the other one had a teenage son, and they would sit in the back where Jack's sitting, that gang back there. Usually that corner of there is trouble. But this kid was sitting in the back, and he was misbehaving. And this, I won't even say her name because it might get to her, but this mom was up here, and she tried getting the attention of little, we'll say Joey, picking on Joey all the time. Little Joey wasn't looking, and so this interpreter had Lynn come up, or someone, Lynn, they switched out, and this mom went right back during church, grabbed that kid by his ear, 13 years old. And then you could hear it out in the lobby, and his look was like, pray for me. 13 would pray. He resorted to a little child, pray for me. A good mom is authoritative. Not angry, but authoritative. Our culture needs authority. I would say now more than ever, but I don't want to. Our culture really needs authority in this society right now. Supportive and loving. Kiss the boo-boos. Go to mom as a child, but then even as an adult. The loving mom. That's a God thing. That's a God thing. So 15 and under, look at your scripture. And if you have a good mom, look at your mom. And then look at some godly women in this congregation. And there are several. And see what God has. It's not a artificial intelligence, robotic. It's God's design for family. A believing husband, a believing wife, who are blessed with children. That's God's design, right? Let's stand.